In a small town, there was a police officer named Mark. Mark had worked as a police officer for many years. People in the town knew him well. Some people thought he was a good officer because he was strict and followed the rules, but others were not so sure about him. Many people, especially from the town's minority groups, felt that Mark was not fair to everyone. They believed he treated some people differently because of their skin color. Mark had a strong personality. He liked to be in control and showed no fear when he spoke to people on the street. Many people were afraid to talk back to him. In the police department, Mark was known as a tough man who did not like to make mistakes. But outside work, some people whispered about how he sometimes said things that were not kind or fair. Over the years, there were many small stories about Mark's actions that made people uncomfortable. Some people said he stopped cars more often, if the driver looked different or belonged to a minority group. Others said he was quick to judge and did not listen carefully before making decisions. Sometimes Mark used harsh words during his stops, and this hurt people's feelings. Despite these concerns, Mark continued to work as a police officer. The police department did not take many actions against him. This made some people feel sad and angry because they thought the police should protect everyone equally. The community started to lose trust in the police because they felt some officers like Mark did not treat everyone the same way. Community leaders and local groups tried to speak up. They wanted to tell the police department that some officers were not fair. They asked for better training and more respect for all people. But change was slow. The police department said they were working on it, but Mark's behavior did not change much. This made the problem worse for many families. In the neighborhood where Mark worked, there were families from different backgrounds. Some were from minority communities that had lived there for many years. These families were proud of their culture, language, and traditions. But when they saw officers like Mark acting in a way that seemed unfair, it made them feel less safe. Instead of trusting the police, they felt worried. Some young people in the town had experienced Mark's stops personally. They talked about how he made them nervous, even if they did nothing wrong. They said he sometimes talked to them in a rude way and asked many questions that felt unfair. These young people told their families about what happened, and the families felt sad that their children did not feel safe with the police. Mark did not see his behavior as a problem. To him, he thought he was just doing his job well. He believed that being strict was the right way to keep the town safe. Mark thought that people who did not follow the rules should be treated with firmness. He did not understand how his actions made others feel. This was part of the reason why he never changed. Inside the police department, Mark had friends who supported him. They said he was a good officer and that people were exaggerating the stories about him. This made it harder for the police department to take action against him. Many officers protect each other because they work in a difficult job. This culture of protecting one another sometimes allows problems to continue without being solved. However, not everyone was silent. Some officers who worked with Mark felt uncomfortable with how he acted. They talked privately about the need for fairness and respect for all citizens. They wished the department would do more to make sure officers treated everyone equally. But these voices were often quiet, and the powerful culture in the department made it difficult to change things quickly. In the town, the community's feelings were mixed. Some people still believed in the police and thought that most officers were good, but many families and community members started to feel frustrated. They wanted their voices to be heard and for the police to show respect to everyone. They hoped for a day when the police and community could work together in trust and peace. The tension between Mark and the community continued to grow. People talked more openly about the need for change. They shared their stories in community meetings, churches, and social groups. The stories showed a pattern of unfair treatment that could not be ignored any longer. The community felt that the problem was not just about one officer, but about the system that allowed this to happen. Mark, on the other hand, did not change his behavior. He continued to believe that he was doing the right thing. This made it harder for the community to feel safe or respected. But something was about to happen that would bring this issue into the light in a way no one expected. The people in the town would find a way to show that no one is above the law, and fairness must be for everyone. This part of the story ends with the town waiting and watching, hoping for justice and a better future where everyone can live without fear of unfair treatment. The next part will tell about the event that changed everything, a moment when Mark's actions were recorded, and the whole town saw the truth. One afternoon, in the middle of the town, something happened that changed everything. The police officer, Mark, was on his regular patrol. He was driving through a busy street where people were going about their day, walking, shopping, and talking. The weather was warm, and the sun was shining. It seemed like an ordinary day. As Mark drove, he noticed a young man named Luis. Luis was from a minority community in the town. He was on his way home after visiting a friend. Luis was calm and happy, not expecting anything unusual. Suddenly, Mark's car pulled up behind him and turned on the flashing lights. Luis was surprised but followed the instructions to stop his bike. Mark got out of his patrol car and walked toward Luis. At first, it looked like a normal traffic stop. Mark told Luis that he had broken a small traffic rule, riding his bike on the wrong side of the street. Luis knew he made a small mistake, but felt nervous because he had heard stories about Mark. Mark's tone was not friendly. He spoke loudly, and with sharp words. Instead of explaining carefully, Mark accused Luis of being careless and disrespectful. Luis tried to stay calm and explain that he did not mean to break the rule and that he was in a hurry. But Mark did not listen. As Mark continued talking, he used words that hurt Luis deeply. He said things that showed he judged Luis not only for the traffic mistake, but also because of where Luis came from. Mark's words sounded unfair and rude. Luis felt embarrassed and scared. Nearby, a woman named Sarah was walking home. She saw what was happening. Sarah had lived in the town for many years and was a close friend of the community. She noticed how Mark was treating Luis unfairly and how Luis was trying to stay calm. Sarah took out her phone quietly and started recording the scene. Sarah knew that this moment was important. She hoped that by recording it, she could show others the truth about how some officers treated people. She did not want to cause trouble, but wanted justice and fairness for everyone. The conversation between Mark and Luis went on for several minutes. Mark kept raising his voice and repeating the same harsh words. Luis did not say much. He was trying to stay respectful and avoid making things worse. Other people on the street started to notice. Some stopped and watched quietly. They felt sad for Luis and worried about what might happen next. Sarah continued recording. She moved closer, but stayed careful so Mark would not notice. The video captured Mark's rude tone and the unfair way he spoke to Luis. It also showed Luis's calm and respectful behavior. The difference was clear. After some time, Mark told Luis to get off his bike and come closer. Luis obeyed. Mark asked for Luis's identification and started writing a ticket for the traffic violation. But even then, Mark's attitude did not change. He spoke to Luis as if he was guilty of something much worse than a small mistake. Finally, Mark told Luis he was free to go, but warned him to watch his behavior.
How?
Luis nodded and quickly left, still feeling shaken by the experience. After Luis walked away, Sarah stopped recording and sent the video to a few trusted friends in the community. The video was clear and powerful. It showed the unfair treatment and the hurtful words used by Mark. The friends were shocked, but grateful that someone had recorded the truth. Soon, the video spread from phone to phone. People started sharing it on social media platforms, where many in the town and nearby areas could see it. The video quickly gained attention. More people watched it and talked about what had happened. Many expressed sadness and anger about the way Mark had treated Luis. Community leaders saw the video and felt a strong need to act. They called meetings and talked about how to respond. They wanted to make sure that the police department would not ignore the situation. The video was proof that the problem many people talked about was real and needed to be addressed. News outlets also learned about the video. Journalists contacted community leaders and the police department for statements. The story became bigger than anyone expected. People from other towns and cities began to follow the case closely. The police department faced a difficult choice. They knew they had to respond to the public's demand for justice. If they ignored the video, they would lose the trust of the community even more. So, The department announced that they would investigate Mark's behavior. This was a surprise. Because officers like Mark usually did not face serious consequences, Luis became a symbol of courage in the community. He agreed to speak out about his experience, told reporters that he wanted fairness and respect for everyone, no matter who they were. Luis's calm and honest words made many people feel hopeful. At the same time, some people still supported Mark. They said he was just doing his job, and that Luis should have followed the rules better. This created a debate in the town about fairness, respect, and how police should treat people. Despite this, the video kept moving forward, the conversation about change. It showed that no one could hide unfair actions anymore. The technology in people's hands gave them power to speak up and demand justice. The tension in the town grew. People waited for the results of the investigation. Some hoped that this would be the moment when the police would change for the better. Others worried that the system would protect Mark again. This moment was important not just for Luis or Mark, but for the whole community. It was a turning point that showed how one small event could bring light to a much bigger problem. The community began to believe that things could be different, that respect and fairness could win. The story does not end here. What happened next would surprise many and teach a lesson about justice and humility. Mark, the officer who had once acted without fear, would soon face consequences that no one expected. The next part will tell about how the investigation led to an unexpected arrest and the beginning of a big change in the town. After the video of the traffic stop was shared, the police department could not ignore the public's anger anymore. People were calling for answers and justice. The video showed clearly that Officer Mark had acted unfairly and used rude, hurtful words. The community wanted the police department to do something real, not just say they would investigate. The police chief announced that there would be a full investigation into Mark's behavior. This was important because sometimes these things were ignored or covered up. This time, the pressure from the community and the media was strong. The chief promised to look at all the facts, carefully and fairly. The investigation team started by looking at the video closely. They also spoke to Luis, the young man in the video, who told his story honestly and calmly. Many other people who had complaints about Mark were asked to share their experiences too. It became clear that Mark's behavior was not just a one-time mistake. There was a pattern of unfair treatment and abuse of power. The investigators found several reports and complaints from previous years that showed Mark had used harsh words or treated some people unfairly, especially those from minority groups. These reports had been filed by citizens, but until now, no serious action was taken. This was a shock for many people because it showed the problem had been growing for a long time. As the investigation went on, Mark was told to stay away from active duty for a while. This was unusual for an officer in his position, but the department wanted to avoid more problems. Mark felt confused and angry. He did not expect to be questioned or punished. To him, he thought he had always done his job well. However, the situation became worse for Mark when new information came out. The investigators discovered that Mark had also broken some important rules about using his power. They found that he had sometimes stopped people without good reason and used threats to control situations. Some of these actions were against the law. Because of this, the police department decided to take stronger action. Mark was arrested. This shocked the town because it was rare for a police officer to be arrested by his own department. The charges against Mark were serious. They included abuse of power, discrimination, and misconduct. Mark's arrest made many people in the community feel that justice was finally being served. It was a moment that gave hope to those who had suffered unfair treatment for years. People began to believe that no one, not even a police officer, was above the law. The news of Mark's arrest spread quickly. Reporters came to the town to cover the story. He interviewed community members who felt relieved and proud. Many said that this was a step toward change and fairness. Mark's family and friends were surprised and upset. Some of them believed Mark was being treated unfairly. They tried to defend him, saying he was just doing his job. But others in the town believed the evidence was clear and that Mark needed to be held accountable inside the police department. The arrest caused mixed feelings. Some officers felt embarrassed that one of their own was involved in such a scandal. Others were glad that the problem was finally being addressed. The department started thinking about how to improve training and make sure this did not happen again. The arrest was not just about Mark as a person. It showed the town and the police department that they needed to face deeper problems. People talked about the importance of respect, fairness, and treating everyone equally. The court case against Mark was set to begin soon. The town prepared for a trial that many believed would be important not only for Mark, but for the future of policing in the community. People watched carefully, hoping the truth would come out and justice would be done. Luis, the young man from the video, became a key witness in the trial. He was ready to tell his story and help others understand what had happened. His courage inspired many people to speak out about their own experiences and demand change. Mark, now facing serious charges, began to understand the weight of what was happening. He realized that the protection he once felt from the police culture was breaking down. The arrest and the upcoming trial were humiliating for him. This was a moment of reckoning. As the case moved forward, community meetings and discussions continued. People talked about how to rebuild trust between the police and the citizens. They wanted new ideas and real actions to make sure no one would be treated unfairly again. This part of the story shows how one video, one arrest can open the door to change. It is a story about courage, truth, and the fight for fairness. The next part will tell about the trial and how Mark faced public humiliation as the truth came out in court. The day of the trial arrived. The courtroom was filled with people from the town, reporters, and officials. Many members of the community came to watch because they wanted to see what would happen to Officer Mark. The trial was important, not just for Mark, but for everyone who had been hurt by unfair treatment. Mark sat at the defendant's table, looking serious but nervous. He knew this was different from anything he had faced before. The judge called the court to order, and the trial began. The first to speak was the prosecutor. She told the court about the video of the traffic stop that had started everything. The video was shown again in the courtroom. Everyone watched closely as they saw Mark's harsh words and rude behavior toward Luis. The video made a strong impression because it was clear and honest. It showed the real actions and words that had hurt people. Next, the prosecutor called Luis to the stand. Luis spoke calmly and honestly about what had happened. He told the court how he felt during the stop, how Mark's words were unfair, and how the whole experience made him scared. Luis said he wanted police officers to treat everyone with respect, no matter their background. His words touched many people in the courtroom. Other witnesses were called as well. Some were people who had complained about Mark in the past. They told stories about stops that were similar to Luis's experience, times when Mark used rude language or stopped people without good reason. These stories showed a pattern of behavior, not just a single mistake. Even some officers from the police department spoke. They admitted that Mark's way of doing things was not right and that the department needed to change. This was surprising to many because officers usually do not speak against each other in public. But the truth was clear, and it was time for change. Mark's lawyer tried to defend him. He said that Mark was just doing his job and trying to keep the town safe. He argued that the people stopped by Mark sometimes made mistakes and that Mark had a difficult job, but the lawyer could not deny the evidence, especially the video and the many complaints. As the trial continued, the truth became more and more clear. Mark's words and actions in the video did not show a good officer. They showed a man who was quick to judge and unfair to many people. The courtroom was quiet as everyone listened to the evidence. Mark's own words and actions were used against him. The video spoke louder than any excuse. People in the courtroom saw a side of Mark they never wanted to see. He was no longer the strong, confident officer. Instead, he appeared embarrassed and defeated. The trial lasted several days. Each day, more stories and facts came out. The community followed the news closely. People talked about what they were learning and hoped that justice would be done. When the trial ended, the judge had to make a decision. After carefully thinking about all the evidence, the judge found Mark guilty of abuse of power and discrimination. This was a historic moment for the town because it was the first time a police officer was held responsible for such actions in this way. The judge explained that every person deserves to be treated with respect, no matter who they are, he said. That officers must follow the law and protect all members of the community fairly. The sentence given to Mark was strict but fair. He would lose his job, and he faced other penalties that showed the seriousness of his actions. Mark felt the weight of the decision. He was humiliated in front of the whole town. The man who once acted without fear now faced public shame. This was a lesson not only for Mark, but for everyone who thought they could act without consequences. The community felt a mix of emotions. Many were relieved and proud that justice had been served. Some still felt pain from past experiences, but they saw hope for a better future. The trial was a step forward in the long journey toward fairness and respect. After the trial, many talked about how the town needed to heal. The police department promised to work on building trust again. New training programs were started to teach officers how to treat everyone fairly and with kindness. Community groups began meeting with police leaders to create better relationships. Luis became a voice for change. He spoke at events and helped others understand why fairness in policing mattered. His courage inspired many people to believe that even small voices could make a big difference. Mark's story became a warning. It showed that power comes with responsibility, and if people do not use their power well, they will face consequences. The town learned that no one should be above the law. This part of the story shows the power of truth and justice. It shows how a community's courage and the bravery of one young man helped to change the system. The final part will tell about how the town and police worked to heal and how this story inspired hope for the future. After the trial and Mark's conviction, the town felt a mix of emotions. Some people felt relief and hope, while others felt the pain of years of unfair treatment. But most agreed that this moment was a chance to start healing. The community wanted to build a better future where everyone could feel safe and respected. The police department also knew that changes were needed. They could not go back to the old way, where officers like Mark were allowed to act without consequences. The leaders began working on new plans to rebuild trust with the community. One of the first steps was to start new training programs for all police officers. These programs focused on respect, fairness, and understanding the lives of people from different backgrounds. Officers learned about how their actions could affect others, and why it was important to be kind and patient. The department also created a new group called the Community Oversight Committee. This group included leaders from different parts of the town, including members from minority communities. Their job was to watch the police department's work and make sure officers treated everyone fairly. This gave people a voice and a way to speak up if they felt they were treated unfairly. The community also started holding meetings where citizens and police officers could talk openly. These meetings were a chance to listen and understand each other. Sometimes, people shared stories about their fears and hopes. Other times, police officers explained their challenges and how they wanted to do better. Luis, the young man from the video, became an important part of these meetings. He used his experience to help others understand why fairness in police work was so important. Luis talked about how it felt to be treated unfairly and why respect mattered. His calm and honest voice helped many people heal, schools and local groups also joined in. They started teaching young people about respect, kindness, and how to work together to build a better community. They believed that change could start with the next generation. The story of Mark's arrest and trial became a lesson for the whole town. People saw that when someone in power makes mistakes, they must be held responsible. They learned that fairness and respect are more important than fear or control. Some officers who once supported Mark changed their minds. They began to see why the community needed trust and respect. They worked hard to be better officers and to build positive relationships. The town slowly began to heal. It was not easy, and some wounds were still fresh. But with patience and effort, people started to believe in each other again. The police department's new programs showed progress, and many families felt safer. Mark, after losing his job and facing the consequences became a warning to others. His story was told quietly in police training and community talks. Everyone that power should be used to protect, not to harm. This story is about more than one man or one town. It is about the importance of justice, courage, and change. It shows how a community can come together to face hard truths and work for a better future. The people in the town learned that no matter how hard the past may be, there is always hope. They learned that when people speak up and stand together, they can make a difference. Luis and many others continue to work for justice and fairness. Their story inspires others to believe that kindness and respect can grow, even after pain and hurt. In the end, the town's story became one of hope. It showed that even in difficult times, people can find strength in truth and fairness. It reminded everyone that justice is not just a word, it is a promise to protect and respect all people. Every day, if you want, I can help you with anything else related to this story or another topic.